Okay, I can be seen and heard. That's good. Thank you very much. Right, let's forget chat. Okay, it's 7 o'clock. We have some attendees. So, good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to this, my masterclass on SQL and how to get that killer job in data using SQL. I'm Nick from the BI School, and anyone who's seen me speak before will know that I'm all about SQL and careers in data that involve SQL. So to start, I'd like you to let me know where you're dialing in from. So if you can type into the Q&A whereabouts in the world you are, please, that would be great. So I have a good idea of who and where I'm speaking to tonight. So I'll read some of those out as and when they pop up. Telford, UK. Oh, I've got a friend who lives in Telford. India, Peterborough. Marvellous. Lovely. Very good. So my aim for the workshop today is, number one, to provide you with as much advice, guidance and information as I can. It's impossible to give you everything in a single session, probably just under an hour, I would think. But what I can offer should be of great value. So this is the main reason we're here today. Secondly, to introduce you to the SQL Superhero Program. This is something I offer where I can work with you, alongside you, to properly help you kickstart your data career. More on that later, and no questions are off limits. I'm here to help as much as possible. If you do have any questions, can I ask you to type them into the Q&A box? I'll do my best to get through all those at the end. Now, it would help me to be able to deliver content and information that's of the greatest benefit if you could answer this question. What are you looking to get out of this session? Please type it into the Q&A or, the Q&A box. The chat box is disabled for reasons unknown. It may be that you've tried to teach yourself SQL and you aren't getting anywhere. Perhaps you know SQL to a good standard, but you're struggling with applying for jobs. Maybe you've applied for jobs and fallen at the technical interview stage, or maybe something else. So please type your answer into the Q&A box of what you hope to get out of this session, and I'll read some of those out as I go on. Okay. So now, before I go any further, I've already talked a lot about these three letters, S, Q and L, and kind of making the assumption that you know what that is, but that might not necessarily be the case. So for the truly uninitiated, let me briefly explain. SQL is a coding language, primarily for extracting data from a database. So by typing specific commands in a specific structure into a piece of database software, you can extract and manipulate data and then go on to create reports, charts and visualizations in another piece of software, such as Excel or Power BI. You can do much more with SQL, such as build databases, data flow processes, and all sorts. But if you're very new to SQL, then that's probably some way off for you. So that is SQL. Why it's important is because it's such a fundamental skill in certain career paths, such as data analysis, to name just one. And today what I'm going to talk you through is how you can leverage your SQL skills or gain those skills in the first place to get the jobs that you're wanting. Okay, so I've had a couple of answers to the question of what you're looking to get out of the session, and we've got to gain more understanding about core skills to secure an SQL role. That's good. And to be able to write all possible SQL, handle all data requests using SQL, to be able to understand more about performance tuning. Performance tuning, that is a big one. Okay, and Pedro says he's emigrated to Switzerland, having difficulties finding a job here. Right, well, hopefully we'll address some of those issues as we go on. Okay, so let's crack on. So here are the reasons why people aren't getting their ideal jobs in data. Number one, they lack the technical SQL skills required for the advertised roles. So looking at jobs, people see jobs listed, they like the look of the job title, description, maybe it's remote or hybrid and that's appealing. Maybe the salary looks nice, but the skills listed as essential, well, you don't have them yet. And it's not like it's asking for a master's degree in astrophysics. It's stuff that feels attainable, and it is. You just haven't attained it yet. Okay. Number two is they haven't found a means of learning SQL that works for them. So I mainly deal with people who have tried looking on YouTube, Googling it, doing some courses, but nothing's really working. And honestly, I get it because I speak to a lot of people who also fit that description. So if that's you, then you are not alone, believe me. Click. Three, they don't know where to begin with learning SQL and specifically what to learn. SQL can seem like a huge topic with lots of commands and functions and techniques to learn, and it can be confusing and overwhelming. The main question I get asked, one of them is, which bits of SQL are relevant to my chosen career? So it's an area that quite a lot of people do get hung up on. Okay, and number four, they don't know how to effectively apply for jobs. So this is a tough one because on the face of it, you've got websites advertising jobs and you can apply with a single click a lot of the time. But where does that get you? Well, people think that hitting quick apply is the only step in the process. It turns out it's step one, about 3 or 4 steps. So if you're only doing step one, then it's unlikely to work out in your favor. Okay, and the fifth reason is this: people are unprepared for the technical interview and end up failing at this, the final hurdle. It's hard to take when you're faced with a technical challenge which you're not prepared. It's even tougher when it costs you the job offer. So over the last few years, I've seen many reasons why people aren't getting the roles they deserve, and these are the main ones. Okay, so have a think about which of these resonates with you the most, and which area you need most support on. Now, I've got a poll at launch. So I've just launched a poll, which you should be able to see now, hopefully. So just enter where you think you are on that list. Your responses are anonymous and you can choose more than one option. So it would help me enormously to direct the remainder of this session to where it's most needed. Now, these things aren't rocket science, and I'm going to give you a workable strategy to get around these obstacles. So that's what we're going to focus on next. Now, if you've not seen me speak before, and if you've not worked with me, then let me properly introduce myself. It's only polite, isn't it? So I'm Nick Holtz. I'm founder and director of the BI School, and BI stands for Business Intelligence. I've been working with SQL for around about 20 years. And in the early part of 2022, I set up the BI School with the sole intention of helping people learn SQL and transition their careers into data. Some people I help are already working in a data-related role, and they're looking to upgrade or advance their careers. A lot are in non-technical roles and are trying to transition into a technical data career. And over the last 12 months, I've helped dozens of people progress from their existing careers or no careers at all into well-paid jobs that are using SQL on a daily basis. This is generally through my coaching and mentoring program, which I'll touch on later. And I've said in this slide that my vision is to create a simple and effective means for people to learn SQL to enhance their career. SQL has been awesome for me and my career, and I want to share that about. There's room for everyone. And there I've said that learning SQL can and should be simple and fun, which is absolutely true. I love SQL, and I hope that some of my enthusiasm shows through for you today. Now, I do a lot of my talking on LinkedIn, and I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. So if you can, get out your phones and you scan that QR code that's over my face, and it'll take you straight to my LinkedIn page where you can follow me or connect with me and join in the conversation. There's I've got the web address on that slide as well, in case you can't scan it for whatever reason. In fact, I will also put it in the Q&A box if people can see that. I don't know if they can. Let's just do this. Copy. And let's have a look. Chat. So I don't know if you can actually see the chat box. I know it's disabled, and that is something I'm working on. Anyway, oops. Right. So there you go. So let's get into it then by looking at the big question. which is all about getting clear on the job you're seeking and asking, do I actually need SQL to get that job? And if so, to what level? So you need to know what you want to achieve and then how best to get there. And it's one of the questions I get asked a lot on LinkedIn direct messaging or via email or through Instagram or in person at training events. People say, I'm hoping to become some sort of an analyst. Do I need to learn about, creating tables, stored procedures or functions? And the answer is probably not. Okay, so here I've tried to map out in a very basic form, I must stress that, the path from beginning to end in SQL. These are kind of the major topics or groups of topics that constitute an SQL learning program. And this shows how they relate to the various data career options. Now, feel free to get a screenshot or a photo of this because it might be helpful as you plan your learning path. So if you want a copy of that, help yourself. That's a freebie on me. Now, obviously, this is a very high-level overview of the topics. There's way more to SQL than this, but it's a kind of a basic guide, and I've labeled it in terms of what you'll need to learn, one of those typical data roles. So from entry-level or mid-level analyst through financial analyst, BI dev or analyst, data engineer, data scientist. And I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, then drop me a message sometime and I'll talk you through it. Now, you may relate to this person. Jennifer was someone I worked with who was experiencing this lack of clarity. She was working in an IT support role, wanted to move into data analytics. She'd heard people talking about this career, heard it was a common role, a growing industry, something interesting, something that somebody with an analytical mind like hers might be good at. But what she didn't really know was what was required in terms of technical skills. She had DM'd me on LinkedIn asking, how can I break into data analytics or analysis? Same thing. We arranged a Zoom call. I did a screen share, and together we looked for some analytics roles. And we're talking about them in terms of duties and responsibilities, location, hours, working conditions, pay, and of course, skills. And then we talked about the path she'd need to follow in order to get there. She'd need to brush up on some Excel functions, but mainly with Jennifer, it was SQL. She had no previous knowledge of the subject. But she didn't need to learn anything beyond the basics. So we planned out her learning, and in about 6 weeks of weekly Zoom sessions, just the two of us, excuse me, she'd reached a good level of knowledge, enough to start applying for jobs. And she got onto, which shows that this is a process that worked for Jennifer. Now, clearly I went through this process with her, but there's no reason why you can't figure this stuff out for yourself. And I've given you a great starter for 10 with that previous slide. So it's all about knowing what you're aiming for and then how to get there. Excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat. Oh, literally. Anyway, so there are right ways and wrong ways to learn SQL. I've made passing reference to Google, YouTube, online courses, self-learning, but it's all down to the individual. I tend to help people who tried these methods and failed. So who has tried to self-teach SQL and found they've not got very far? If so, stick a message in the Q&A. I bet there are a few of you, because it's not easy. And it's all about knowing where to start and then what order in which to learn the topics. And excuse me, I'm going to mute for a minute and have a good throat clear, just a sec. That's got it. It's like Bob Fleming over here. Yes, it's all about knowing where to start and what order in which to learn the topics. It's very easy to be blindsided by somebody, maybe someone like me, talking on social media or in blogs about some cool SQL command, and then you go off chasing that only to end up lost and confused because you've gone in too deep too soon. And I'll talk in a few moments about how I can help you solve that particular problem. And the final thing is what to focus on and what to ignore. Like I mentioned earlier, you don't need to know all SQL, just the relevant bits once you've figured out what those are. So a few months ago, I mentioned knowing what order in which to learn SQL. And honestly, if there's one main thing which trips people up, it is this. I've spoken to people who say they're very basic level SQL and they'll list about 4 or 5 commands they're aware of. Then they'll say, I really struggle with window functions or CTEs or pivots. And those things are way too advanced for somebody with only basic skills. It's like having 2 driving lessons, then applying for a job as a rally driver. So I created a document, a 14-page PDF called Your SQL Roadmap to Success. And that's something you can have for free. I'm giving it all away tonight, aren't I? In a nutshell, it tells you what to learn and in what order. So it's been downloaded well over 600 times, maybe closer to 700 by now, and people are finding it really helpful. I've had some great feedback from people who've used that to start self-learning. So when we get to the end of the session, anyone who's still here, I'll email that to you. So don't forget, if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A section. I'll get to those at the end. I just want to make sure this session is as useful as I can make it for you. So we've had a few comments. Joins and foreign keys. Yeah, that's a tricky one. So yeah, I mean, that's something that a lot of people struggle with. We will be able to get this session's recording. Yeah, what I'll do, Abhay, is I am recording it. I will put it on my YouTube channel and I will send out a link. Yeah, and then I've got a roadmap is crucial. Excellent. Glad you agree. So, okay, so I'm doing this slightly out of order now. So we've got our 4 steps. I've done step 1. Now I'm going to jump ahead to step 3, which is what happens after you've learned SQL, and we'll come back to the SQL bit later. And there's a reason for that. It just makes more sense to approach it in that way, as you'll see. So skip ahead in your mind's eye to the point where you've done what we talked about in step 1. You've figured out what you needed to learn, and then you've spent the time, a number of weeks or months, learning SQL. So now you're applying for jobs. Now, who here, honestly now, who's done this? Got on a job website, seen a job you liked, clicked quick apply, and then just moved on to the next job, just waited for that call or email to say, come in for an interview. And that call or that email has never arrived. I know I've done this in the dim and distant past, and it's the lazy way. And even worse, it does not work. Okay, so what you need, if that's been your plan in the past, is a process that does work. And LinkedIn is a fantastic platform to make a big splash, to connect with recruiters and to sell yourself. And that's what it's all about, selling yourself. You need to do some marketing. Now, if no one had ever seen an ad for the iPhone, no one would know they existed and would never have bought one. So it's all about marketing. And here, in a nutshell, is a process that works. So in 2023, your LinkedIn is your online CV, okay? It's your landing page. It's your free personal advertising space. So use it. Okay, so step 1 is to build a killer LinkedIn profile. That's your photo, your headline, your about me, your skills, your experiences, your endorsements. And those are all things I can help with, but I'll address that later. You can post content, and that means writing about things you're interested in. Talk about data analytics, if that's your thing. You'll talk about your journey. LinkedIn readers love a good 0 to hero story. Now, you don't have to do this. There's no pressure, because posting on social media isn't for everyone, putting yourself out there. But it's about building your reputation as someone worth employing. I get approaches frequently from recruiters and employees tapping me up for roles. And that's because they see me as someone with skills and so a person who has authority in the subject. And that just comes from the stuff I put out there every day. Okay, so the next step is to build a network. And that simply means doing a search on LinkedIn for recruiters in your area. That's geographical area and technical area. Recruiters love to be found and networked with. It's easy for me to say, because the more options they have, the more good, skilled, technically competent people they're connected with, the more likely they are to fill those roles, and therefore the more money they make. And a recruitment consultant making money is a happy recruitment consultant. So it's simple. So connect with them. It's dead easy. Now let's go back to the bit here where you're looking for job postings, and here's how to do it right. Okay, so now that you've laid those foundations, these are those next steps, those other steps we talked about. Now, on every job posting, whether it's on a website or LinkedIn, there should be the name of the person, or at least the company who are advertising that role. If it's a name, search for that person on LinkedIn. If it's a company, search for that company and find someone in a recruiting role, HR advisor, talent acquisition specialist, someone in recruitment, that sort of thing. And then it's as simple as connecting with them. And here you can send them a message. The message can say, hi, I've applied for this role, and briefly, here's why I'm an ideal candidate. And have you got 5 minutes for a quick chat about it? Now, this is a technique which worked perfectly for my wife, who I helped find a new role, and in fact, a complete career change last year when she switched from being a teaching assistant to working in HR. So we built her a strong profile and a good network. And when she saw a role advertised, she had something to back that up. Because recruiters will always check your LinkedIn profile. So she sent a message to the hiring manager, asked for a phone call, got a phone call, had a brief telephone call, and she could talk the hind legs off a donkey, my wife. So she got the interview, and then she went in and she nailed the interview and she was offered the job. And she took it, and she's still there and she's loving it. Okay, so here in a nutshell is a process that works. It has worked for me countless times, and for many of the people I work with, tutored, supported, and helped into new careers. It works. That's all. It just works. Okay, so I mentioned this a few minutes ago, that one of the key things I focus on when you choose to come and work with me is this. So I'm looking forward to seeing yet more great results with you if you're up for that. Okay, now let's have a look. Okay, well, tell you what, that's a good question, Neha. I'll address that at the end, though. I like that. So now let's talk about another of those key areas I mentioned earlier, those points of failure where people trip up. And this is step 4 of 4, but we've still not done 2, so we're going to go back to 2. It's like Star Wars, isn't it? Episode 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 10, whatever. So we're going 1, 3, 4, 2. So this is 4, okay? So when you've got, okay, let's say you've got some interviews lined up and then you're going for a technical role, you'll have to face a technical interview. Okay, now SQL assessments in job interviews can be daunting. No matter what your skill level and amount of experience you have, being tested on that knowledge in a pressure situation can be really daunting, a bit scary. I've seen capable people crumble when asked questions in an interview. So Google won't be your savior here. And now who here has relied on Google for your interview prep and research? If that's you, stick a yes in the chat window, the Q&A window, because I've done that. It's the obvious place to look. I've tried it and I've got caught out because it's so unfocused, weak and generic. You can spend an hour or 2 looking at likely interview questions, and I've done it. And I've also sat in interviews on both sides of the table. And the interview questions you'll see on Google are rarely anything like the questions you'll hear in real life interviews. And in any case, half the battle is knowing how the interviews are structured. You need to know what format these assessments take. And there are 3 main types, as we will see shortly. So you need to be prepared, and that means trying to recreate interview conditions and hopefully getting a friend or family member to help you practice. And remember this, you can't blag a technical interview. You'll either know it or you don't, and you will be found out if you don't have the technical knowledge. I think that everyone has had an experience where they've been for an interview and not got the job. I certainly have on many occasions. And how does that make you feel? It's pretty rubbish, isn't it? It makes you question yourself and doubt your own abilities. And I remember interviews when I felt like I was missing something, some vital piece of the jigsaw of the process that I wasn't aware of, like I was missing out somehow. Well, with these technical interviews, you can steal a march on other candidates by being more prepared than them, because there are 2 elements to a successful interview. Number 1 is being good enough for the role in terms of skills and experience. And number 2 is being better than the other candidates. Now, obviously, you can't control the quality of the competition, but you can control your own approach. Now, this is something you might want to write down. It helps break down the understanding of the process. Companies use a recruitment model called SEARCH, and this stands for skills, experience, attitude, results, cognitive abilities, and habits. And when you just understand how best to display those 5 things throughout the process, you'll stand out above everyone else. Now, if you want to grab a photo or screenshot of that, you can. I'll leave it in place a minute whilst I just get another drink of water. My mouth dries out when I talk too much, which I don't in normal life, but on these things I do. Okay. Now, is all this making sense? If I'm talking too quickly, just put a comment in the Q&A, say, slow down, slow down. So, yeah, so if you do have any questions, pop them in the Q&A box. This is all about breaking down that barrier of the interview and making it logical, putting it into logical steps. Okay, so let's move on. And a minute ago, I said that there are 3 main types of SQL technical assessment: the verbal, written, and hands-on. Now, this information is really important because when you start going through that process, well, this is what's going to happen. So the verbal assessment, just ask you some questions. Now, this could be for lower level SQL positions, but I've also seen this technique used as an initial gateway interview for more technical roles, like almost like a pre-interview, if you like, often done on the phone or on Teams or Zoom call. And it's just to gauge your knowledge, just to get an idea. So it's something like, what's the difference between an inner join and a left join? What's the difference between union and union all? Tell us when you might use a dense rank. So it's not necessarily difficult questions, but things that relate to the technical level of the role. And they're just trying to test your technical knowledge. That's their entire purpose. So you do need to know your stuff. For the written interview, you'll get some questions typed on a piece of paper and you can write down your answers. You need to be able to think on your feet and demonstrate a good overall knowledge of SQL. This might be something like writing a query based on a written down table schema. Again, not too difficult, but it's the interviewer's intention to understand your skill level with SQL and whether or not you've lied on your CV. And on that point, don't lie on your CV. You will always get found out. Okay. And that's not comfortable. It really isn't for anybody. Okay, and the third one, the hands-on interview, is the one where you face if you're going for a more technical role, and there they're going to sit you in front of a computer. There might only be one question, one challenge, but it'll be something that might take 30 or 40 minutes to complete. Okay, so has anyone sat interviews like these? I've sat a few. I've been on both sides of those of that desk, and it can be difficult if you're not prepared. But if you are prepared, and you can get in there and you can smash it. Okay. So hopefully those last few slides weren't too scary and I've not put you off this path, but bear in mind this, that if you get offered an interview, they will tell you which of these 3 formats your interview is going to take. So there won't be any big nasty surprises. That just doesn't happen. So you'll also have some idea based on the type of job you're going for. If it's an entry-level data analysis, you know it's going to be relatively simple. So it's what I call here the 3 P's: prepare, practice, and polish. Okay, prepare is knowing what interview format you're going to be facing. Get hold of some example interview questions, and I can help you with that if you like. Practice is going through those interview questions, and I can help you with those as well. And polish is simply rinse and repeat. You know, make sure you've done it and done it again so that you're calm and relaxed on the day. And the rest of the interview is down to you, your personality, your smile, your other technical skills, and of course your soft skills. Now, let's just very briefly talk about those soft skills. So these are normal, everyday professional skills and qualities you'd need to demonstrate, whether you're going for a job with SQL or as a school teacher, bank manager, office assistant, anything. And it's stuff like communication, time management, decision-making, problem-solving, teamwork, organization abilities, adaptability. That's not an exhaustive list. That's just a few I thought of based on my own experience. Okay, now is all this still making sense? If you do have any questions, please make sure you're popping them in that Q&A section and I'll get to those at the end. Okay, so on to the final section now. Here we're going to talk about the actual process of learning SQL. Like I've said, I've done it a little bit out of order in terms of chronology, but it makes more sense to address this part last. So back in step 1, I talked about knowing what you want and making a plan to get there. That's what actual SQL you need to learn. And then we talked about how to source interview opportunities, and that was step 3. Then I mentioned my process for getting you ready for interviews in step 4. Here, I want to discuss the actual process of learning SQL, because it's easy for me to say, make a plan and go ahead and do it. So this is step 2 in this 4-step process. Hope you're still with me on this. Okay, so learning SQL on your own can be a lonely experience, or learning anything for that matter. It can be boring, spending time in your evenings on your laptop when Netflix is calling, or this football on telly, the sun's out, or your friends are going out somewhere, although the sun's not out around these parts, hasn't been for some time. If you live in Britain, you'd probably be used to the rain by now. But some aspects of SQL are complicated and difficult to understand, and some therefore often difficult to explain. And sometimes you need someone to look at that and say, well, let's try this approach instead, and then it clicks. So you see what I mean here? Does this make sense? So it helps if you can work with someone to decipher these bits, to figure stuff out together, kind of a learning buddy, for want of a better expression. You have someone to jolly you along, to encourage you when it's getting tough, and to give you some accountability. Now, when it comes to learning SQL, you have 2 options. Okay, DIY stands for do it yourself. Follow that roadmap from the PDF I mentioned earlier. Do the research yourself and force your own accountability. Be responsible for your own pace and time management. Figure it all out yourself. And the upside is, because those things are pretty much stonewall negatives, the upside is it's free. It doesn't cost you anything apart from your time. Now, I can guide you here. I can send you that roadmap and you can work your way through it. I have had people who say they've learned SQL that way, and they've gone on to do well. But it's long and laborious. It involves a lot of Googling and head scratching. It's like if you had to teach yourself anything. It's hard, even if you have a solid set of instructions. I tried to teach myself German, okay? It was a difficult process, at the end of which I could just about manage "Sprechen Sie Englisch? Mein Deutsch ist nicht so gut," which, as our friend in Switzerland will be able to tell us, means, do you speak English? My German is not so good. So in the end, I wasn't getting anywhere. So I got a tutor, and then it all changed. So it got easier, quicker, more enjoyable, and 1,000 times more effective when I did it with a tutor, which leads me nicely onto option 2, which is you can do this. Do it with Nick's help. And I'm Nick, in case you've forgotten. Okay, so this is something I'll talk about later when I go into more detail about the SQL superhero program. But if you do it with my help, I'll be your guide, your friendly, supportive, interactive guide and mentor. I'll be there for you when you get stuck, because everyone at some point hits some sort of a roadblock. I'll help you on your way, and you'll get to where you want to be more quickly and more easily. Now, working with a coach and a mentor isn't everyone's cup of tea. Doesn't work for everybody, but pretty much all the people who pass through the virtual doors of the BI school have said that what they felt they were missing previously was mentorship, guidance, and the main one, accountability. And I've just seen your comment there, Ewelina, about my German, so thank you for that, much appreciated. So that's someone asking, where are you up to? Where have you managed to learn? What have you managed to learn this week? What has caused you a problem this week? Do you need my help specifically for anything? And if that's a yes, let's jump on a call. Let's jump on a one-to-one for 15 or 20 minutes. And it's also, accountability is about asking, what are your wins this week? Let's celebrate those, no matter how small. It's not about cracking the whip. It's about creating an encouraging environment. So I've got images here of 3 famous movie mentors, Yoda, Mr. Miyagi, and Morpheus, all there to help, guide, and mentor our heroes here to their eventual success. Although I bet none of them can do SQL. Okay, so yes, it's a blank slide. So what does all this mean for you? Well, let me just quickly review what we said at the beginning. The most common problems people face are these: not knowing the level of SQL needed for their dream role, not having an effective means of learning SQL. That's not knowing where to start or how to progress in learning SQL, and trying online courses that were just not effective for you specifically. Not being able to make an impact when applying for roles, and therefore not getting interviews, and then getting interviews but not knowing how to prepare effectively for those technical interviews. Okay, so the question is this: what are you going to do? Well, when you choose to come and work with me, we will make a plan. We'll figure out what you need to learn in order to get those roles. I'll teach you SQL from bottom to top, exactly what you need in a way that works for you. So if you prefer to work alone from my videos with weekly drop-ins for questions and feedback, that's fine. But if you learn better through one-to-ones or in small groups, then that's what we'll do. Okay, we'll help you get your LinkedIn profile in tip-top shape, build your network and make yourself known to recruiters. That's all the things I mentioned earlier. We'll also help with your CV, posting content if you decide to follow that route, messaging, and making sure that the recruiters know you and want to work with you. Okay, and then we'll help you prepare for technical interviews. So if you do this, you'll be ready for anything. Okay, that's all about learning the process, getting loads of practice. I'll do some practice interviews if you feel that would help. Now, honesty here, I'm not a careers coach. Okay, I'm not a recruitment consultant or a recruitment expert. All I've got is my own experiences, the knowledge I've built up over my 20 years or so working in this industry and changing jobs every 2, 3, 4 years. Okay, so that's all the stuff about interview prep. That's just me talking from the heart and telling you how it is out there. So I've identified and mapped out a 15 to 20 week plan. That's 10 to 15 weeks to learn SQL. So here's where we begin. After we've done that early discovery work of figuring out what we're trying to achieve and making a plan, then around 2 to 3 weeks to make your LinkedIn profile rock and start building a network, because that's the most effective way to get interviews. And then 2 to 3 weeks to get your interview ready. Now, these time periods aren't set in stone by any means, but that's why I urge people to try to stick to. Some people take a little more time to get through it all, but really there's no time limit. But time, well, it waits for no one. And the quicker you get through it, the quicker your career can progress in the way you want it to. Okay, now that's what I referred to earlier, and it's called the SQL Superhero Program. So who wants to be a SQL superhero? So here's what we're going to do, okay? And here's what we're going to achieve. And I'll just read these out, okay? So one-to-one coaching sessions, at least once a month. I like to get together with everyone at least once a month, but some feel they don't need it and will prefer just to work through the videos, and some need more support, and that is fine. Group coaching and support sessions. So currently we meet on a Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. UK time. Not tonight, obviously, because that's in 20 minutes. For around an hour. People can drop in and ask questions, listen to other people's questions, or just come to hang out. I'm trying to build a community of SQL superheroes in training where we've all got each other's backs. Guided coaching through pre-recorded video content. That's about 30 actual technical video lessons presented by me, recorded and available for you to access via a training portal. You can make this your main learning method if you like, or simply use it as an additional backup resource. LinkedIn profile reviews. So here I'll help you define your LinkedIn profile so it's as effective as it can be. That means making sure your about me is accurate and descriptive. Your skills and work experience are all there, and you've accounted for any career breaks. You've got a good photo, all that sort of thing, because these days in 2023, as I've said, your LinkedIn profile is your online CV. And then CV help. Now, as I've said, this isn't my exact area of expertise, but I've seen a lot of CVs, some good ones, some bad ones, some very bad ones. I can give you some pointers, but this is something I may hand over to a partner to help tell with somebody who does have a lot of CV experience. So I'm in discussions with a couple of people there to help us out with that. And then interview preparation and practice. So this is where we work through some of those challenges like I was talking about. And then support and encouragement. And this is what I'm all about. And this is ongoing. It's what I'm here for, to provide technical expertise and guidance, but also the support, encouragement, guidance and mentorship you need to progress. If you're in a position where you're losing opportunities to people who have more experience or just a little bit further ahead, we're going to work out a strategy to get you that experience and those skills and get you to be the one who's ahead. You know, we'll work together so you become the standout candidate for these roles that you're applying for. And honestly, I wish I had this when I first started out in this industry. I had to figure it all out for myself. So all this is literally what Jake did. Now, Jake was someone who worked with us a while ago, and what he did was to go through these steps and he got these results. It was pretty insane what happened. He's absolutely smashing it. And all he had to do was follow what I said step by step, have his handheld, jump onto the calls, work with me. You can see exactly what he did. I'm not going to read all those out. It's there for you. Well, people are doing this right now. And if you want these positions, you need to understand that this is the shortcut. Okay. Similar story with AO. We did the exact same thing. AO was actually my first client, and he was studying application development at university, but struggling with the SQL. We worked together on weekly Zoom sessions for a few months. He took the challenges that I set him. He allowed me to guide him, coach him, mentor him, and his results were pretty astonishing too. Then a few weeks later, he got a new job in web development. So he was properly pleased with that, as was I, obviously. People can do amazing things when managed in the right way and motivated and supported. People regularly surprise themselves with their own progress. There are some great reviews online, which you can easily find. I'm not going to read these out, just one example from Trustpilot, a few more here from LinkedIn. I've obscured the names just to protect the guy's privacy. My point here, and the reason I'm showing you these is not to show off, I just want you to know that these exist. So go and check out my LinkedIn, my Trustpilot page, or have a look on the internet. Just give us a sec. Okay, so to recap slightly, first, you need a way of knowing exactly what you need. And that's simply a case of doing some good old-fashioned research. Look at advertising jobs, look at advertised jobs and establishing what they're asking for in terms of technical skills. That can help you understand the jargon and terminology to decipher that language, because you need to understand that to plan your learning. You get this thing, okay, where job ads will say proficient in SQL. Okay, so a junior analyst job will say proficient in SQL, and a senior data engineer job will also say proficient in SQL. And it does my head in, honestly, because it's all massively relative. Because those two jobs I just mentioned have vastly different actual requirements in terms of technical knowledge, but they both say proficient in SQL. And so, you need to be able to interpret that, okay? And I can help you do that. You need a process of learning SQL to the required standard, a path, a roadmap to follow, which tells you where to begin, what to do next. Again, I can help you here. You can take a copy of that roadmap document. I'll let you have it shortly, or can actually hold your hand through the entire process and do it with you. So you'll get there a lot quicker, more effectively, painlessly, if you let me be your guide, your roadmap, so I can show you the direction you need to travel in your learning journey. Let me be the Yoda to your Luke Skywalker, okay? I've done this loads of times and always with great results, and it's what I do best. So you need to know how to handle those interviews. Again, this is where people fail time and time again. It's all about knowing the format, knowing how to handle the questions. And I know how passionate you are about what you want to do and what you aim to do, what your ambition is. So we need to work together to get you there. Okay, hashtag stronger together. So your next step, okay, should be to book a call in with me to discuss how we can look to support you. Now, on that call, we'll just make sure you're suitable for the program and the program is suitable for you. And that's it, really. I will help you personally define a strategy to get you to that place, that destination and career goal where you've learned SQL and you can confidently apply for those jobs you want and deserve, you know. I'll help you figure out what you need to learn, and then we'll learn SQL together to an appropriate level for that ideal role for you. And I'll help you get ready for job interviews. So here's what you can expect from experience with me and the BI school. Guided coaching through pre-recorded video content, one-to-one coaching sessions, at least once a month, more if needed, group coaching and support sessions, LinkedIn profile reviews, CV help, interview preparation and practice, support and encouragement. I mean, honestly, that's a given, but it's also my primary USP, my unique selling point, and that's what you just don't get elsewhere. Okay, now we're doing all this for just £800. That's reduced from £1,200 just for the month of August, and that's a huge reduction. This time next year, this is likely to be closer to £2,000, to be honest. So I'd get in now if I were you. I do have the capacity to split that over 2, 3, or 4 monthly installments if you need. So the first step would be to book a call with me, and to do that, just get out your phone and hover it over that code. Fingers crossed that the technology works. It took me a long time to draw all those dots. In fact, what I'll do is I'll send out an email either later tonight or tomorrow, which will contain all the necessary links. And yeah, okay. So there are 5 slots available, and when they're gone, they are gone. Now I restrict myself to taking on a maximum of 5 new clients per month. Here we go again. Just a sec. Okay, sorry about that. Maximum of 5 new clients per month, and that's so I can make sure everyone gets the time and attention they need and deserve. As I said, this call that you're booking now is on Zoom, and it's just a way of me making sure that we're suited for each other. I insist on meeting everybody before they sign up. Okay, so that's your lot. So let's see if you've asked me any questions in the Q&A window. So let's go back to the top. Okay. It was Switzerland. Okay, let's have a look. So there's only one question, and it's this. So this is Neha. To explain the difference between T-SQL and SQL. Okay, so you got T-SQL and just SQL. So you can get SQL on different platforms, okay? Microsoft SQL Server, MySQL, Postgres, Oracle, and they all have slightly different kind of flavors, if you like. So if you learn SQL on one platform, then you've already learned 95% of SQL on all the other platforms. Date and time functions tend to be slightly different. So the SQL that you do on Microsoft SQL Server is referred to as T-SQL, and the T stands for transactional, I think. Yeah, so T-SQL just means SQL done on Microsoft SQL Server. Well, SQL is SQL. It's like a dialect. So if you learn English, you know, in London, but then travel up to Birmingham, they sound like they talk funny, but it's the same language. It's just some slight differences, different words they use and different meanings. So yeah, so SQL is SQL, and the difference in T-SQL and SQL is just T-SQL is Microsoft SQL Server. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Pedro says, do you have prices for one-to-one calls? I do offer technical hour sessions. If you just wanted to book an hour session with me, I do that. I do that for £50. So you can do that. But if you just want this one-to-one, like I'm advertising, like I'm talking about here, that's just a free call. But if you wanted technical support with something, then yeah, I do those at £50 per hour. Okay, so that's that. So that's the end of the session. And I really hope you found that useful. People have started to drop off now, so I've got to wind up. Don't forget, there's only 5 slots available. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So get in quickly because they do go quickly. And we've already had 1 or 2 booked up, which is great. So yeah, do connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'll see you next time on that call. So thank you for joining. And before we go, I just want to get a selfie, and I'll stick this on my Instagram. So let's have a look. There we go. So I'll pop on my Instagram later. So thanks for joining, and goodbye, and see you soon. Take care.